G'day, g'day, you beautiful creatures. It is wonderful to have you again for another Age of Sigmar Monday, brought to you from the lovely freezing cold city of Canada. Canada, you are beautiful, but I am yet to find any body warmth. I have commissioned a small team to try and locate where my nether regions have retreated to. And unfortunately, they've yet to return. It's that freezing cold. But I am loving it here. It's amazing. War Dollies is great. I just keep meeting new and awesome people. I'm hearing from people in America, so I can't wait to get down and meet some of you. Got down. Now that I'm in the Northern Hemisphere, things are below me, which is great. But yeah, in other news, Khorne's out. That's just fucked. Like, they've straight up ruined a lot of people's lives, mine included. And I think like a lot of people, I tried them at the start initially. I gave them a little go, didn't love it, wasn't hugely keen on them. And now that they've got, like, they're the new masters of endless spells, right? Like, they have endless spells that are just going to wreck your life, no matter what's going on. They'll roll them, they'll get a reroll, they'll fuck you up, you can't take control of them, and they're just going to wreck you. But we'll get to that, we'll get to Khorne, we'll get to everything. So a lot of people chiming in, and as I've heard from just about every Canadian I've met saying that Vancouver is one of your warmer cities, that's not okay. This isn't warm. This is not warm. Comparatively warmer, but sweet Betty Dingus, it's rough. Every day when I walk outside, I think that I have worn enough clothes, and the answer is I haven't. Just every single day. In fact, you can't quite see it, but today's show is taking place in front of a fireplace because that was the best way to do it. Now, the landlord did tell me that there's not you need like some kind of oxygen alarm in your places apparently now. Like in Australia, we just have fire alarms in case, the place is on fire. But apparently you guys need an alarm in case you run out of breathable air or something. Is that a thing? Is that a thing here? Anywhere? Do you guys need to worry about like having enough stuff to breathe? Sweet Jesus. But yeah, so I'm right in front of a fireplace, so like the left half of me and butt is currently toasty, which is real pleasant. It's making me feel great. So it was, I keep seeing obviously locals in like shorts and t-shirts, and that's not a thing at all. Look, as always, before I get... Yeah, I'm an idiot. Fair. Yep, I guess. Okay, so sorry. Shorts. Hey, g'day everyone. Hello everyone, you beautiful people in the chat. Just saying hello. I guess I'll... Carbon dioxide. Okay, so sorry. You need something to tell you if the place is filling with carbon dioxide. That's interesting. So if at any point in time I just pass out, please call, I don't know, Captain Planet, whoever provides you with more oxygen. But yes, as always, hello to all of our subscribers on Twitch. You're fucking legends. You're awesome. You're like, yeah, like you're beautiful people. Like if I could meet you, I would slam you like a screen door in the wind because you're just that gorgeous and you're that spectacular. To our Patreon supporters, you guys are like half the reason that any of this happens. So anytime that you see new tech on stuff, or you see like even little things that you might not necessarily recognize are huge, but for example, when we go to events and we can draw on the screens, that's stuff that's come from you guys. So I guess thank you to everyone who makes all of this happen. Mounties, sorry, I am informed. Mounties is who I would need to handle. Poor baby, can't even handle 17 degrees. All right, TK Tristan. You come to Australia, we'll see how you play a game of War Dollies in 42-degree heat, and then we'll compare notes. Like, at least I can still function in 17 degrees. Like, I saw Rob struggling to just, like, about exist in a moderate 36-degree temperature in Australia, and that wasn't even the worst. So basically, to everyone who is out there, you're amazing people. If you support the show in any way, shape or form, whether you're a subscriber, whether you're a Patreon, a donator, whatever, if you put anything into the show, everything actually comes back for you. So you're beautiful, you're wonderful, we love you. and can't wait to bring you more content, more cool stuff. But obviously, today we're here. We're going to talk about a few different things. Now, as the guys put out there in some of the material, we're going to be talking about allies, allegiances, and arterial clogging, which are three things very near and dear to my heart in a lot of different ways. So I guess I will start off having a bit of chat. Yeah, hardcore weather chat. Yeah, sweet. As always, in fact, that's what I'll do. Every Aussie Abroad show, I'm going to open with a quick update on the weather. And the update is fucking cold. That is the update that we find ourselves with. That's where we're living, and that's the world that I've decided to move to. So yeah. Yeah, there needs to be... No, it's not a long underwear emoji. I need a thermal, like, body sock emoji. Yeah, basically like a morph suit, except made out of thick rubber. I'm just going to wear a scuba suit underneath all of my clothes. That's probably going to be the move. All right, so let's dive in and talk about allies. And in the chat, what I'd love to hear is kind of your side on a lot of this as well, because I know that there's some people out there and some allegiances that don't need allies, and that's great for them. Like very rarely do you see stuff allied into a deepkin list or things like Stormcast. Though one of the cool things is you see Stormcast regularly allying in skinks into their for that speed, the bodies, everything like that. And I think that it's almost like I know as a furious dispossessed player who converts every allied unit in my army so that I'm always taking a dwarf, I often get shade thrown at me for not taking 100% dispossessed. And I think that it's the kind of thing that people don't really look at a lot, is what allies can you take? Because if you see a gap in your army, you should fill it with something. Now, to give credit where credit's due, there are people doing that all over the shop, which is freaking awesome. So like to give him his little moment. For those who watched the CanCon coverage and saw the I think it was the 4th and the 6th games, the final, Khorne, who was playing Caldron Overlords, he was doing an awesome job. Now, as you can see down here, I've got my little buddy. He's chilling out with me. Just like, hello, how you going there, mate? Yep, good job. Yep, you just chill there. Now, he allied in 2 units of 5 evocators, which, if you look at a KO army, the one thing that they don't have is a durable combat unit. They lack a lot of mortal wounds, and the other thing they have is obviously no magic, which meant that by allying in those 2 units for the relocation orb and for places where you need wizards to capture wizards or models with artifacts, he's filled that gap in his list. He's also given himself 2 big wound sinks with decent armor, rerollable saves, stuff, units that really don't need buffs to be good. And I think that, like, for a lot of people, they don't look at that kind of thing. Now, I do just want to put it out there that if you are a Khorne player who allies in a Gaunt Summoner on a Balewind, you are a piece of shit. And if you ever did that, I just want you to go home and really think about yourself, because, like, there's some critical things that we need to discuss, like mostly like how you go to sleep at night, when you were hurt as a child to the point that it made you into a bad person. Like, there's a lot to discuss there. I mean, like, you are an awful human. Like, we can all agree on that, right, chat? Like, if you're a Khorne player who allies in any wizards, you're a bad person. And yes, so with Khorne players, a lot of the time, if they've got a Blood Secretor and Gore Pilgrims, which you always have, they were then denying their own spells, having to reroll, which is why you had all these fucking crazy things where Khorne players were just regularly doing it for like the mortal wounds and to delete units and stuff. I know a few people in Australia who pulled that one, and all of them, they were all real bashful when they said it, you know? Like, no one is like, oh yeah, no, and I've done this, and acting like it's a really cool thing. They're all like, oh yeah, and I've allied in a Gaunt Summoner on Balewind. And you see them, like, you know when you see something coming towards you and it's too late to react and it's gonna hit you in the face no matter what, and you just do that, like, small, like, tensing of all your shit before it hits you? That's exactly what they would do after telling you. They'd be like, oh, you know, and I took a Gaunt Summoner on Balewind. Because they're waiting for you to turn around and be like, you... And they deserve it, because they are pieces of shit. However, talking about what you ally in is actually really important. So most of it's magic are like Khorne or dispossessed. It's like, nice. I love that you bring that up, because that's exactly where I was about to go. Now, I am not a huge fan of the battle plans that require an artifact or a magic user to capture, because I think that it basically puts some armies out of contention. Like, take Sylvaneth, right? They have tons of magic users. They have really easy access to cheap multiple battalions. So 9 times out of 10, every single one of their heroes is going to be a scoring unit. Where you compare it to a unit, an army that maybe doesn't have a battle tome, doesn't have as much access to stuff, doesn't have wizards. So you look at things like Beastclaw Raiders, they're probably going to have 1 capturing unit. You look at Dispossessed, they're going to have 1 capturing unit, which is where you really do need to look at allies, especially if you're playing in a tournament, right? If your opponent has Nagash and then, I don't know, or like shit, Flesh Eater Courts, right? Just a whole lot of basic bitches rocking Terrorgeists with ethereal amulets and shit like that, they're going to be sitting there. Sorry, but there's no way. That's a completely different conversation, but 100% a valid one. That there are things, I guess, that you shouldn't have to ally in, like Grudge Throwers, Organ Guns. Like, you've got Dwarf Cannon teams with the Dispossessed keyword, but their cannon doesn't have Dispossessed, and they're technically Ironweld, so you have to do that. What I'm finding I'm going to have to do now, because in the previous edition, in Age of Sigmar 2, the 2017 General's Handbook, I allied in a Prime into my Dispossessed list just to give me speed and flying and a hero that could drop in late and do a lot of damage. It was really, really cool. Really loved it. Before he got his little change, I failed so many fucking charges by rolling double ones with him and not being able to change it. That was really good. In fact, final round 5 of CanCon on the top tables, that's what he did to lose me the game. Yes! So he was removed from the list completely. But the point is, now that we're into the 2018 General's Handbook, which is probably about to change in the next little while, but I've had to ally in a wizard because I need another scoring unit for things like Places of Arcane Power and Relocation Orbs. So, I mean, a Knight Incantor slipped in there just super easy. That Void Storm Scroll thing is just spectacular. The ability to dish out mortal wounds on hordes is just amazing. And of course, also allied in an Everblaze Comet. Now, I guess the reason I want to talk about allies is I think that it's a really interesting conversation to have. Because for me, with my Dispossessed being so slow, allying in the Incantor was first and foremost to give me a second scoring unit. But the big one was because that Everblaze Comet for me forces my opponent to move. And if I'm really slow and my opponent can get on objectives, they can tend to just wait me out. But putting that in there changed the gameplay for my opponent. It can deploy back if they know I have it. What was that about a Comet? What that was about the Comet is that I got one. So nice. I got myself a Comet. I got myself a Knight Incantor, and that Knight Incantor has a Comet, and they just drop the hate. And what it does is it forces my opponent to move forward. It stops them bunching up their heroes. It's a really effective tool. Also, the Everblaze Comet is way underpointed for how good it is, so it probably is going to change, and that's cool. The other thing that I allied in was a unit of Fulminators. So 2 Fulminators with their buff against shooting and everything like that, and their speed are a really scary unit to harass your opponent with. Now, both of those are things that my army couldn't do, which is why I looked at allying it in the same way that you see Stormcast players allying in Skinks. I think it's really smart. Even if it's just 2 units of 10 Skinks, they're fast, they're really easy to get bodies on, get out of combat, all that kind of thing. But the other really good, strong thing about Skinks is that if your opponent's targeting them, they're really wasting their firepower, because it's like, well, you're either killing Sequitors and Evocators or you're killing Skinks. So the Skinks are what win the game, but at the expense of taking out all those big, chunky, expensive Stormcast models you got. I think that's a really awesome ally in. Another one that I've noticed a lot is like people with like Beastclaw Raiders allying in Grots and things like that, because yeah, they don't have bodies. They need as many as they can get to capture objectives, because otherwise they're like a 6-7 model army. TK Tristan, why isn't LLV here? I have no idea. Also, like this, as people keep explaining to me, this is a large country who knows where he is? He could be anywhere. But yeah, so I guess over to you guys in the chat, like, what have you been allying? Like, or do you avoid the shit out of it because you're like, you got your nose up in the air and you're like, oh yeah, man, I don't need to ally shit. I'm pretty fucking rad. Or are you a Flesh Eater Courts player, in which case, like, you just bulk down on monsters because you're a basic bitch Gristlegore player and you walk around in Ugg boots drinking like pumpkin spice lattes? Is that you? That's what you are, isn't it? It's okay. It's okay. We love you. We accept all kinds of hobbyists. Unfortunately, there are people like you that exist. And that's real rough. I mean, look, was kind of cool to see that they got pipped by Skaven at the SAGT, the South Australian GT. Skaven did manage to take that one, which was really cool. Dan Brewer, I did speak about him last show, on the test show that we did, so I won't get too far into it, but bless his cotton socks, he done did the dirty and he busted them right up, which was pretty cool. It was good to see. Now he did give me a quote to read out, which maybe I'll do later. We'll see. Okay, yeah. So we've got a few people like talking about what they're getting in. Okay, so yeah, go the Comet. Yep, sweet Grixty. Paul, mate, legend. 100%. Yes, you are right. The Comet is possibly like, I think there's a lot of people who will be allying in a Knight Incantor, not for the Incantor, but for the cheapest way to get access to the Comet, because it's fucking legendary, right? Like, mortal wounds, start of the next turn, more mortal wounds. You just mess everybody up. You need a 5 Retributors when you play Dispossessed. Okay, not bad. Like, just for the big hitters, I guess gives you nice, like a well-armored bulk just to put in front of them. Yeah, wow, that's there's a lot. Yeah, okay, KO, yeah, also good point. KO, very progressive. They might be about magic, unless they're from that Skyport where everybody gets dispels because they're all about science and progress, so they don't believe in it. Non-denominational Flesh Eater Courts, I like that. Yeah, so sorry, Grixty, Paul Grixty is in the chat. For those who don't know him, he's Grixty11. Now, he is an absolute legend. One of, if you've watched the CanCon coverage, you should check out, or if you haven't, go back and check out Game 3. It was Sylvaneth versus Paul's Swifthawk agents. Now, I don't want to put too much pressure on his shoulders, but I am 100% going to be getting Paul in to talk about his little elf boys at some point. Probably in the next couple of weeks, whether we can work out time-wise to get him on the show so you can actually hear his beautiful, bristly, manly voice, or whether we throw together a podcast or something to put out there, because he took Swifthawk agents. And they, turns out, not too bad. Not too bad at all. Day 1, 3 major wins against some very competitive armies as well. So I guess the thing to talk about, like, with that as well, is Swifthawk agents has a unit that I did not realize were as fucking good as they are until I saw Paul using them. And might I just say that Paul is possibly one of the biggest legends I've ever met in the game. Like, we spent, Rob and I were commentating on the game. We spent probably half the time commentating on their game and the other half the time commentating on Paul and Bruno as the two legendary human beings that they were. Because they were just constantly like high-fiving and dancing, and they were fucking loving life. And you cannot hope for a better game of War Dollies than that, than two blokes who, like, it's like that Step Brothers moment where it's like, did we just become best friends? That's literally what their whole game was like. So credit to him. He's a bloody legend. But what it introduced me to was the Reavers. Now, Reavers, are they the guys who hugged at the end of the game? I'm pretty sure they hugged a few times. There was like a lot of hugging going on between the two of them. Like, it was a beautiful thing. Also, Bruno, Paul's opponent, rocked up with like a stroller, like a baby stroller that he had converted into carrying his army and train and everything like that. He looked like the proudest little dad. If only he wasn't playing Sylvaneth. But it was great. Anyway, it introduced me to Reavers. Now, Reavers for 140 points are fucking ridiculous. Like, multiple shots with their bows. But the thing that got me is that they are fast as hell. Like, they're movement 14, I think. Now, Grixty, you're in the chat, so correct me if I'm wrong. They're movement 14. They've got a ranged attack, 2 wounds each. But the thing that really blew my mind is that in the shooting phase, either before or after they shoot, they can move another 2d6, which means, and then that's not a run, so then they can still charge, which means that potentially they're moving like an average, well, they're averaging moving like 21 inches a turn, but it also means that they can move, shoot at a unit on an objective, and then potentially move in again to tag that objective. And then if they need it, charge in to push something off. I just think that for 140 points, like maxing out at 280, 2 units of 5 of them in any order army that can take them as allies, I think they are absolutely ridiculously costed. And I think the only reason that you don't see them everywhere is because you could only get them, or their later sculpts, in the old Island of Blood box. But they're going off like a frog in a sock, right? Like, they're just insane. I remember watching that game and just seeing them like shoot up the board, take a couple of wounds off a character, and then like dance around behind the objective just to get a couple in and take it. Not good in combat. All right, thank you, Grixie. Yeah, not good in combat. So they're not what you want to do it. But if you think about, compare that to a unit of skinks. I guess a unit of skinks, you get 10 wounds so same wounds for 60 points. So you would get, for 120, you get double it. 6 up save, pretty shit ass ranged attack. I guess the big thing with skinks is the bodies, but they're not as fast as those reavers. And again, if your opponent's spending time killing off your reavers, they're shooting at a 140 point unit that is really, really versatile, but not really the meat of your army. And so I think they're great. Orc Boyfield, 100%. The fact that they're no longer available, I reckon, is the reason we don't see them all over the shop. But if I was doing it, I'd be converting them out of Dark Riders and maybe like the Shadow Warriors kit, convert those two together. And straight up, Stormcast armies should be taking them. Stormcast armies would probably benefit a lot from that, because you can put that many things in front of your opponent they have to deal with that they can't afford to ignore your Star Drake or your Sequitors or your Evocators to target a little 5 unit of Reavers. That blew my mind. They're freaking awesome. They're a great unit. Paul used them incredibly. Paul's a legend is kind of the point there. But yeah, as far as allies go, I don't know why we don't see them. We see skinks because they were popular. They were easy to get. You got them in a box of 24. Reavers, I reckon, are better. And fight me if you think I'm wrong, because you suck. I guess the other big thing with allies as well is like recognizing how your army loses games as well. Because for my Dispossessed, the thing that I've always noticed is I lose games based on maneuverability. So that's why every time I was allying something in, it was like a prime, or now it's fulminators. It's things that give me a little bit of speed that I don't have. Which is where, like, say for Stormcast, you always see them allying in something that gives them maneuverability. I mean, if they're running stuff like Vanguard, they're usually like the flappy boys, what are they called? Prosecutors, Vanguard Wing. They usually don't need it, but they're often struggling to push shit uphill like that. I think the kind of bouncing off that into like a little chat about allegiances, I made a terrible decision when I arrived over here. Prior to even securing an apartment, which I have done now. I have a place to live. It's great. And buying furniture, which I haven't done. Still need to do that. Have an apartment. It looks like a crack den. Is I bought an army. Now, the army that I bought was because I got a little bit drunk. And also there's some other stuff over here that's legal, that's not legal in a lot of other parts of the world. And I got a little bit legally that as well. For locals, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I put together an Ironworld, like, inspired kind of mixed order Hammerhall army, because I read some of the malign portent stuff, and I'd just been doing all this reading about the cog forts, right? And cog forts are like freaking awesome. To those who don't know, the cog forts are like these maneuverable mini bastions with full garrisons and everything like that. Yes, that's exactly right. Maple syrup. I was talking about maple syrup. Thank you so much. That's it. Maple syrup makes you do silly things sometimes. Anyway, I'd been... yeah, Tristan, maybe. Who knows? I'd been looking at the cog forts, looking at all the art I could find for them, reading about them, because I've really gotten excited about consuming as much information on the mortal realms as I can, and I'm freaking loving it. It's kind of like, it's funny though, the amount of times I read something and I'm like, oh, that sounds like Australia. You know, like they talk about Gur and everything trying to kill you, and I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds like home. Then I read about like the realm of light, and the fact that like vast majorities of it are just completely parched and barren. And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like home. Yeah, right, okay. And then like it talks about, you know, Ulgu and just how shithouse people are. And I'm like, oh yeah, sounds like Melbourne. So, you know, it's kind of like everywhere sounds like home, which is kind of cool. It's good to hear. But so I've been consuming all of this stuff, and it got me really excited about Ironworld. It got me really excited about the cog forts. And I think in the same way that for me, my favorite fiction in 40k has always been based around either guard or inquisitors or like very human, normal people. I got really excited to put together maybe like a cog fort garrison based around like the normal people, humans who get sent out to do stuff. Like, and I can see how many people love Free Guild and play Free Guild for that very reason. You know, you live in a world where there are like immortal gods in lightning armor beating the shit out of stuff, and then you're a dude who can't even afford shoes trying to fight against the same things that they're dying to. And I just find that a lot more interesting and really kind of cool. So I decided to put together like a Hammerhall inspired, like, so Hammerhall Aksha, like the fire realm side, Cogfort Garrison. So like really washed out, really heavily converted and messed up stuff. And then that got me thinking about all those really wicked allegiances out there that people you don't see represented. Because like, so to have a little look, see, right? Well, we'll just have a cheeky little peek, see. Let's where are we? There we go. Beautiful. I really hope that y'all can still hear me with that little transition. Yeah, that's right, boy. We're doing transitions. But you may need to zoom in your screen to see the stats that are popped up there at the moment. But you can clearly see on that top section just how heavy a lot of the stats are leaning towards the really common allegiances, which, you know, it's kind of expected, because those are the ones that get all of the love, they get all the new models, they get blah, 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 all this really, really cool stuff, which is super great for them, you know, just snaps for them. We're all very proud. LLV, how's it going, mate? Good to see you here. We're actually just talking about some of your wicked fucking stats. So it's lovely to have you here. And all the Canadians are like, oh, he's finally here. We assumed that you were fighting bears. So with an axe, is that what we discussed as a group? I think that's what we discussed as a group. Just having a look at the stats, you can see how heavy the market is saturated with all those boys up the top. That was a different, Tristan, that was a different day. A different day. I'm a consummate professional, and I wouldn't do anything like that while I was working. But just having a look at the stats in Age of Sigmar 2.2, like, look at how heavily weighted the top is compared to the bottom. As far as the meta percentages goes, like, you see how pathetic the representation for some of these allegiances are, like Phoenix Temple and Wanderers and all this stuff. I mean, we don't need to talk about the fact that Dispossessed, 0%. I'm going to fix that at Wet Coast GT, don't you worry. But the point is that there's so much variety there. There's so much option for people to kind of create their own stories. That's what I'm really kind of excited to see. I mean, look, we don't need to talk about like how shithouse it is that the same people are doing the same things and they're dominating the same blah, 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 whatever. But I just think that what is there is, it kind of lends itself to maybe finding something else and finding something really cool, which is where I got really excited for the idea of doing this cog fort. And then I bought the army. Yep. Definitely didn't plan on that. Just kind of slipped out and did that one. Woke up the next day and realized what I'd done. But the point is that it got me excited about the city, the allegiance, the conversions, and everything. And so what I would really like to do is showcase a bunch of people who are playing those lesser represented allegiances. So I'd love it if you're out there, or if you're in the chat and you know someone who plays an allegiance that you on that list, or if you check out the stats at thehonestwargamer.com, and they're not really well represented. Let's go with less than 1%. And you're playing that army. I want to hear from you. I'd love to talk to you, because these are the stories that I'm actually super interested to tell. Like Gutbusters players or Swifthawk agents. So that's why Grixty, I'm going to get him on, because I think that those people have so many interesting stories, and also none of those people play that army unless they love it. You know what I find really interesting, right, is that since I got to Canada, I have had to scrape to get dispossessed. Like, I needed a new couple of units of Longbeards. When I arrived here, they were sold out. I bought them literally like the day that they came back into the online store, and by that night they were sold out again. Now I'm pretty sure Canada is kind of done by, is supported by the American warehouse. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that means that like Dispossessed must be selling like hotcakes. Now that does warm the cockles of my black and bitter little heart, but what it does also do is it kind of like points out just how much demand there are for those lesser ones. Tristan, mate, Tomb Kings might be above it, but they're not dominating everything we see, so that is definitely a conversation I would love to have. So I did hear about that, about Tempest Eye heavy Dispossessed doing quite well, which is really cool. I love the city armies. But death results like 90% Tomb King. Actually, that's very true. Well, that's because they don't have their own allegiances, right? So they're just Allegiance Death now, I think, not Allegiance Desert Legions. Is that what they're called? Oh, that's empty. So what I think is happening is there is kind of starting to be a shift. Somebody else that I'm really keen to get on, those who might know him from Australia, a bloke named Ash McEwen. You can find him on Twitter. He's a very talented gamer, very talented painter, very attractive man as well. Like, he does a face well, and the rest of his body is quite nice. Just FYI, if you're looking at him, you'd be like, oh, I feel very, very threatened. But that's okay. He knows he's more beautiful than you, and that's fine. That's why it's all right. But he's really, really good at it. His armies are painted beautifully. The cities are modern compendium, right? No, the cities are still there. They're totally legal. You can still take them. They've FAQ'd it now, so that the cities are there, but you only get the Grand Alliance stuff with the city. You don't get to be like Allegiance Dispossessed, also Tempest's Eye. You get Grand Alliance Order, Tempest's Eye. But they're not compendium. The cities are sweetly still cool. Sorry, I just need a little bit more, because it has been a beautiful. Sorry, you all just got to watch my elbow while I grab myself a little drink. But the compendium stuff, I think it's really sad to see some of the compendium stuff go, but we got to lose it. But the cities really excite me. I like what they can be. I like as well that you see a lot of different stuff coming out of them. But Ash McEwen he was an Iron Jaws player, and he loved Gordrak, and so Gordrak was in all of his lists, and he was like all about, he was the Trump of the Iron Jaws, make Gordrak great again. And he did real good with Gordrak. Also a beautifully painted army. Then he moved on to Tzeentch, and he did quite a different Tzeentch army, which is, it's beautiful to look at. He had a whole backstory for it. I think he called it the Glimmervolt Oligarchy. I butchered that name, whatever. And it was awesome. And now he's moved on to Nighthaunt, and they're a gorgeous army too. The colours, the style, everything that he's gone with. But the thing I think that now is he is doing a Devoted of Sigmar army, which I have never seen. And as soon as I found out, all of a sudden I'm thinking yes, all of the priests, all of the witch hunters, just, the doomsayers and things like that of the old world. and that straight away I was like super excited, really interested to see it. And also, that's not an army that you choose to do because they're like dominating and because they've got amazing magic that can rival Nagash. That's an army that you do because you love the models or the source material or what you can do with it. So I'm 100% going to try and record something with Ash as well to bring to you, because I think that that's going to be really cool. But literally anyone out there, if you or someone you know is working on like a lesser allegiance, like not, let's start like outside of that main kind of 10, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to record something. I'd love to get you on the show because I think that that's really interesting what those allegiances give us. So for me, I was looking at my Iron World stuff and then going through the artifacts in the Realm of Fire to be like, okay, well, what would kind of symbolize them and like be their kind of thing. So yeah, I really dig it. I also love seeing what people get up to paint scheme and conversion ways. So yeah, it's real cool to see when, I guess, necessity is the mother of invention. When you've got a book like Stormcast or Nighthaunt or Legions of Nagash, where you just have so many miniatures and you have so much to choose from and so much variety, it's almost overwhelming, right? So like you're locked by the amount of choice you have, so you don't need to work as hard to go outside. Now, that's not saying that people don't. I'm not throwing shade at you. I love you all, you're beautiful people. Just because you play Stormcast doesn't make you a bad person. If you play Gristlegore, that makes you a bad person. LOV. It's a lovely little Australian whiskey. It's from a distillery called Nant in Tasmania. And this is the last of it. Cheers. So iced tea. Yeah, it's iced tea. It's iced tea, Tristan. It's fine. It's just iced. It's tea. It's delicious. It's not Canada Dry. No, it's not. But I think when you have so much to choose from, you are overwhelmed because you're spoiled by choice. So you don't need to work as hard on all of that other stuff. Now, people still do. That's super cool. But then people also just paint them gold and run them because the allegiance abilities for Enzels of Heldenhammer or whatever the fuck they are is amazing. Then you get other people who have very small amounts of models to choose from. And they get, somebody else knows Nant. Yes, it is like a Scotch. It is. One of the world's most well-scoring whiskies as well, if I may. Moderately expensive, super delicious, real easy to drink. I've just got a little bit of ice in it. But yeah, real easy to drink. Just absolutely delicious. Nectar of the gods. Unfortunately, I brought a bottle with me and it's almost gone. And I don't know how to get it here. And I think it's going to be expensive. So I might just have to work out something else to drink. But you guys don't need to know about what I'm drinking. That's unimportant. The fact is that I am drinking and it's not Foster's. That's all that really matters. That's all that we got to worry about, because Foster's is piss water. But yeah, people with less to choose from get real creative. And they have to like hustle to come up with their own sides of things and own storylines. Again, not saying that people don't do that with bigger stuff, but just that if you're working with less, it's almost like you work harder to make it more. And those are the stories that I really want to tell. It's like, I love that the Swifthawk agents are effectively, and just the same shit that everybody was talking about at CanCon was that the postmen were doing well. Because that's what Swifthawk agents are, right? They are the postmen of the Age of Sigmar, of the Mortal Realms. And so it was, I kept having flashbacks to that. Yeah, it's the Postman with Kevin Costner. That's the Postman, right? Chat, please correct me if I'm wrong. It's like Waterworld, right? Terrible movie, but also pretty good movie, right? Like terrible, but pretty good. Kind of loved it. Still love watching Waterworld. Still love watching The Postman. But I couldn't help but like watch the Swifthawk agents day one just blitzing their way through stuff, and then just be like, yep, that's Kevin Costner and The Postman just pushing everyone's poo in. It was great. The Skeleton Horseman army. Yeah, see, like, and it's not peaty. It's actually the other. I do love a good Lefroy. The thing I love about Lefroy is that everybody around you also knows that you've been drinking Lefroy, because you straight up smell like a peat bog. But it's delicious. I used to manage a bar, and like whenever somebody would order it, it was always 50-50. Either they had no idea what they were ordering and just wanted to sound because they'd heard somebody else order it, and you'd see them do these ones. It was either that because suddenly they'd realized what a terrible, terrible decision they'd made and they needed to do a big mouth breathe to make it better. Or you saw them drink it just like a normal human being. But I was always just kind of like, sweet, I respect you. I hate that all I'm going to be smelling for the next 45 minutes is Lafroig because I opened the bottle for like 30 seconds and it's just so strong. But damn if it isn't good. It's pretty smooth. I don't mind an Ardbeg. Goes well in an old fashioned. I'm basically keen to do a bit of a trip. So yeah, I love that this is now I've made a grave mistake, which is pretty much the same face that anyone who has a drink of Foster's makes. I think as it was once described to me, people drinking whiskey often start smooth and then as they get used to it, they work their way up through the peaty stuff because like you start to want more and more and more. I started peaty, I made that exact face, and then I went back the other way and then made my way back. And now I kind of like to jump around and have whatever I want. So yeah, thank you. Locals, I don't know, does Canada have any whiskey distilleries? I feel like I've seen some gin ones here, but I haven't seen any whiskey ones. Okay, so basically what Canadians are telling me is that other things, like what you want to do is drink other countries' alcohol, which is cool. I'm glad. Okay, so now Age of Sigmar Mondays is going to be a show. It's going to be Age of Sigmar and whiskey tasting. That's what we're going to do on Mondays. I'm a partially accredited sommelier as well, so if you're interested in some information on red wines, we can do that. The Honest Wargamer can bring you honest alcohol reviews, and I'm sure that we'll have a wonderful time. So yeah, it's a beautiful time. It's a wonderful time for war dollies. It's also a wonderful time for alcohol because back home, alcohol was so heavily taxed and so insanely expensive. And I'm not talking about like just getting smashed and hammered every night. I'm just talking about having a couple of drinks. Got real expensive real quick. And over here, happy hour is a beautiful thing. It's a gorgeous thing. Australians just come over here for happy hour. It's great. But people are just saying word. Red wine makes you... Red wine. Yeah, good. I like that. Wine makes you never want to drink again. Only if you have a bad time on it. If you have some good stuff, it can make you feel like a special, special boy. But we were talking about the postman of Age of Sigmar after that big tangent into discussing alcohol, which I'm really glad that you went there with me. I'm so glad that the chat has my back and immediately wanted to discuss this. This should be cast in front of me and we can drink in Okay, well, Matt, LLV, look, I'll have a chat to Rob and we'll talk about a Friday Frothy show where we discuss alcohol and what we're drinking, and that'll literally be it. And then maybe we can tie it back into War Dollies by talking about who in the Mortal Realms this drink reminds us of. And we'll have a show notes and a drinking list. If you want to go 5-0, you have to buy the Wet Coast Tio red wine. Okay, good to know. Yep, sweet. I always love when you see like a place with an open bar and people offer to buy the Tio drinks, because like 9 times out of 10, you see the Tio is actually slogging their guts out, and 100% they would love a drink. But they're also like, I am working so hard to make all this shit work. The last thing I need is inserting alcohol into here and then continuing to make it work, because that's just going to make things absolutely impossible. I literally do not know how Clint does it. He is a beautiful man. He is a national treasure, which is why we must protect him, because the fact that he can run events like CanCon and then turn around, like drive. I think I saw him the morning that they left Canberra. They drove 14 or 20 hours, got home, and then he was working on the next year, the next day. It's great. Team King Tristan, have a wonderful night. Sleep well, mate. And I'll just give you some ASMR, like just some whispering to go to bed on. Hey Tristan, you've been such an awesome guy, and you had such a big day. So now it's time for sleep. So go on, turn the lights out, close your eyes, and just enjoy a wonderful, wonderful evening in Dreamland. And we'll see you tomorrow, okay? Good night, buddy. Okay, I think Tristan's gone. So that was just for him. That's just his private good night. If anybody else is tucking themselves in, I'm available for birthdays. But I think that just getting back off the alcohol train, back off all of these trains, I think that there are some really, really like talented people out there, and they definitely deserve drinks. All TOs deserve drinks. It's just choosing your moment so that they don't explode. So yeah, I think that buying a TO is always necessary. It's not, a drink is always necessary. It's something everyone should do. You should just try to, make sure you do it at an appropriate time. Like maybe a week after the event, that would be the time, right? Like just contact the TO and just PayPal them $10 and be like, mate, you have earned a drink. Go and buy yourself a bottle of something cheap, or buy one bottle of something, a really expensive beer or whatever. That'd be the way to do it. LLV, 2.5 years without sleep. Respect. That's some solid work there. I assume that it's all just nose candy keeping you awake, and that's great. That's good. I mean, it might be kids, but I like to believe in something more dramatic, which is great. Now, just going right back to the discussion about allegiances, the reason that I was super stoked seeing the Postman of Age of Sigmar do so well, part of the reason that I get so excited about Dispossessed, why I'm really excited for an Ironworld list, or hearing about all these different people doing different stuff, just to refresh in case people have dropped in recently. If you have a cheeky look at some of these big bold stats right here, proudly provided by the incredible LLB, who is in the chat and is a spectacular human, by the way. Let's not forget that he is functioning without sleeping for 2.5 years, and also providing these sweet stats. But look at some of these armies, like Slaves to Darkness, only 1% of the meta. Your Darkling Covens, Order Draconis, like it's insane. Even like Clan Pestilence, 0.2. Oh, come on, guys, you got a fresh book. Wanderers, and like even I know that they're real shit compared to Nurgle, but Tamrakan's Horde, I kind of understand. I'm interested that, like, I would actually love to see, and what I don't know if you're out there. I don't know if you exist, but if you do, I really, really want to meet an Eldritch Council player. I would love to meet an Eldritch Council player. Does anyone know one? Does one exist? Do you play Eldritch Council? Where are you? Because I think your only battle line is like Swordmasters, and you've got fly shit. You Beastclaw Raiders? Christ on a bike. Okay, yeah, I'd love to see it. Sweet Betty Dingus. Yeah, that'd be great. Beastclaw Raiders, because I'm a big fan of ogres. I've got an ogre army with a lot of Beastclaw allies, and I dig them. I dig the big boys. I loved Ogre Kingdoms back in Warhammer Fantasy. I love their models, especially after painting Tiny Dwarves. I painted an ogre army just to paint things on a bigger scale, because I couldn't paint little boys anymore. Not that I don't love dwarves, just like I needed knees. I needed kneecaps and elbows, and that's what I got. But like Eldritch Council really interests me. I think it's a really interesting list. In the same way that I can't wait to get Ash on the show and talk to him about his Devoted of Sigmar, because that is a really interesting, really specific army. And obviously, like, we play an army, we might not necessarily think that it's going to dominate and crush everybody's life. But at the same time, like, you want to be okay with it. You want to know how to play it in the same way that watching Grixty in his first few games at CanCon, just with those Swift Talk agents, pick apart his opponents was awesome to watch. Really well played. I would really like to find those people. So Eldritch Count, like all of them, if you're out there, get in touch, drop me a message on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. But if you play Eldritch Council especially, I want to find you, I want to meet you, and I want to talk to you about Eldritch Council things, like how good are sword masters? I don't know, probably not anymore, but we'll find out. Now, know a dude who does elves. Okay, yeah. Play me with Beast Gladiators and almost beat you first turn. Skinky Boy Dreamer. What mission were you playing that he nearly did that first turn? Was that like Better Part of Valor, or like Damn, I thought we were past the point of first turning, but yeah, and also past where Beast Claw Raiders would do well. But apparently I'm wrong, and I'd love to see some Beast Claw Raiders start to pop up and show up all over the shop. Total Commitment. Yeah, right. Okay. So they just kind of nixed your shit. Now, that's all lovely. That's all good. So we're going to continue that discussion next week. Like I said, love to talk to you. You won. Yeah, good. You got good. You just let him believe that he'd have it turn 1, and then you dominated him after that. But we're going to move on from the chat about allegiances, because what I want to have a quick chat about, and a little bit of a talk. It's time to talk about Khorne, right? Now, I mentioned it at the start. They are the boys right now. They just got their own battle tome. They're doing all their stuff. Here he is right now. They've got all their own stuff. They're doing real good, and they're angry. They're in fact angrier than they ever have been. People were disappointed about the change to Wrathmongers. I get it. You liked munging on some Wrath. You liked your cheap little unit, like wrecking face with everything out there. But personally, I'm totally fine with it. I think it's cool. I think it suits their theme. And it also means that one shitty little dude can't force like a Prime or Nagash or a Gristlegore hero to cut his own head off. Totally cool. But the thing that does get me about them is the Judgments of Khorne. Judgments of Khorne, they give me a little worry because of the altar thing that lets people reroll. Now, I'm all about prayers. I'm a dwarf player. Dwarves dig on prayers. We're fine with it. In fact, I would support any army having prayers. You know, get them on a 2-up like dwarves. If you're good like dwarves, you can have them on a 2-up. I mean, I did play a game where I failed like half of them last week, which was fun. But praying is okay, because often the effects of a prayer like balance with what you get. And I also don't mind that the judgments, there are 3, 4, or 5 to get them up, which is cool. You can't stop it. I'm okay with that. And they go away, or you need to roll, I think it's a 5+ to keep it around. I haven't really had a good look at the battle tome yet. You need to roll a 5+ or whatever to keep it around into the next turn. All of that I'm fine with. I don't like that your opponent can't control them, because like Khorne has always been about like, it doesn't matter from whence the blood flows, or you have all these cool stories about like Khornate warriors being just about dead and cutting off their own heads as to like give their skulls to Khorne, like all that awesome lore that's out there about them. It's great. So it would completely make sense for Khorne to like send this axe cutting its way through the battlefield, and all the Khorne warriors to be like, yeah, Khorne, and then Khorne to be like, meh, and go back and cut through them like an endless spell. It also disappoints me because that really takes out my favorite thing about endless spells, is how much it messes with priority. If your opponent can't control them, then your opponent, like, there's no question in priority. You just get that in the next thing. So they don't disappoint me because they're overpowered. They disappoint me because they make the game less dynamic, which I'm all about that ridiculous stuff. I once played a game against Nathan Prescott, who if you watched earlier today, he is on the London time Monday Age of Sigmar show. And we played a game, My Dispossessed versus his Grots, and I'm pretty sure he had every endless spell, like all of them that he could take. This is before the Grot Battle Tome, and he cast all of them between turn 1 and turn 2. So, and I didn't have any wizards, so if I failed to dispel them, they were just there. So our board had like Jaws and Geminids and Purple Suns and Aether Void Pendulums going between like the 2 Umbral spell portals. It was madness, right? It was total insanity. And then the joke was that he would put all that out there, cover the board in endless spells. and then be like, all right, sweet. My army deals well with chaos. Let's see how you do. But also to force his opponent, like it meant that whenever a priority roll came up, it was really hard deciding on it. And anyone out there who has the same thing, like has an army that relies heavily on endless spells to mess with your opponent, I sound off because I'd really be interested in how much that plays into your thinking. Like, I know there are some people who are starting, it wasn't very popular, but they're starting to take the Purple Sun, because you put the Purple Sun out there into your opponent's army, and then if you win priority, you're like, okay, cool, well, it's not really a threat back to me. But if your opponent wins priority, they have a very strong reason to want to give it away so that that Purple Sun doesn't wreck up more models in their army. So I find it really cool, really good tactic. So it's also kind of disappointing then to see that has gone from the Khorne stuff. But yeah, it'd be interesting, especially given that they have that stupid little altar that lets them re-roll their prayers. Wouldn't mind the prayers if they didn't get a chance to re-roll it. That just, it feels a little bit dodgy. All of a sudden, like the whole risk to doing it. We're never going to see a Slaughter Priest that's outside of whatever it is, 6-8 inches of that thing. Never going to happen. They'll hide behind it, out of line of sight. That's where they'll live. And they'll cast as many of those, which is a shame. Like I said, takes away from some of that dynamic stuff. But the thing that I want to talk about in relation to Khorne, and it's a very Canadian thing. So Canadians in the chat, please sound off. Because I've discovered something that I think is actually the weakness of Khorne and will stop them. Because Khorne are all about flowing blood, right? They want blood to be flowing from any and all orifices, preferably. I mean, mostly the stump of like the neck. That's where they want. That's the thing, right? I feel like I Googled it and it was I think like, let's see here. We're just gonna have a cheeky little look on Google. Canada national dish. Let's see. Canada national dish. Boom. Poutine. That's it. Yep. Canada's national dish is super crispy, mega cooked fries, gravy, and cheese curds. Not cheese curds. I'm not aware what the difference is, but all I know is that I put it in my body and physically felt my heart slow. It's like, usually I know that like cholesterol and fat build up in your arteries probably takes a lot of time to get around and get there. I've been having heart pains ever since my 4th poutine today. And it's on struggle street. Now, this got me thinking, right? If poutine can clog arteries, like, yes, it will kill us. However, it'll make Khorne totally uninterested in us, because even if you were to cut our heads up, like my body could probably survive for 8 to 10 minutes without my head at the moment, because I don't think that there's any blood flow really. It'd be a slow seep at best. Chris Welfare, lovely to see you in the chat. I'm assuming you're at work, because I think it's like the middle of the day in Australia. Lovely to see you. G'day. I miss you guys. Also, congratulations on having like the fucking cutest kid in the world as well, because that's really good. But yeah, so I literally think Quebec has a lot to answer for. But I genuinely think that poutine is the solution to defeating Khorne, like in the mortal realms. Like if everyone just went straight onto a diet of that, yes, we'd all be a lot more sluggish and a lot more useless, but Khorne would not be interested in us because it would stop the flow of blood. So anytime you come up against a Khorne player, just offer them terrible, like high fat, artery clogging goodness, and just see them, their eyes, like the sadness in their eyes based off of it, because what you've done is taken away the one thing that they love. But yeah, straight up Canada, you got some stuff to answer for, because like who invented poutine? Like where did it come from? Who was like, hey, I've got these chips, I'm going to cook them a second time. Okay. Now I'm going to cover them in gravy. Well, like the British probably thought that. The British did that, which is great. Good on the British. But then who went, not cheese, who had like cheese curds and this gravy chip thing and went, like, whose idea was that? because that takes someone with a really like broken sense of like flavors and taste. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm like, it's killing me. I probably won't survive, but that's it. People would just die. 100% right, LLV. There would be, the armies would be running towards each other. Khorne would be stoked. They're like, we're about to have this awesome thing, and then just on the way in, because of the heart palpitations of running towards each other, they would just flop down dead. And the Khorne would be super disappointed. Khorne's going to get real weak because he's like that god of fighting and stuff. He's just going to disappear out into his own sense of self-importance, and that's going to be the end of him. So I think that's it. The answer to defeating Khorne is poutine, which probably is what Slaanesh would be all about. I feel like that is just, like, poutine is probably a creation by like Slaanesh, because there's nothing more excessive. And then you have versions of poutine where you're like, also add in a shit ton just more like bacon, why not, or beef, or like stuff. It's messed up. Chris Welfare, in the chat, Chris is quite a lovely human being. Also writes real fucked Age of Sigmar lists, like just stuff that will wreck your face and push your poo in something shocking. And basically, I think you ran a list with 3 skull cannons that was based around getting them tons and tons of shots and wrecking face. Again, super cool. You feed those skull cannons poutine, their arteries are going to clog, and they're not shooting skulls at you anymore. They're shooting like peas and teeth, a lot less scary. However, skull cannons like multiple shooting, hitting on 2s, attacking in the combat phase, shooting the stuff they're in combat with. Like, it's messed up. It's insane. So I think the answer that we need is just that Khorne needs to stop being around, and poutine is the answer to that, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm just catching up on the chat. I believe, God, I brought up poutine, and look at the Canadians show up. They're just like moths to a flame. Like, oh, hey, did someone say poutine? You just see everyone. Oh my God. Yep. Right. Gee. Wow. Yeah. That's it's big. It's add smoked meat. Yep. That's yep. Make sorry. I dig that. Budtastic saying like make them fight when it's -40. You know what? I couldn't fight right now, and I think it's what is it now, like -100 or something outside, or it's probably only like 10 degrees or something. But as I said, I'm sitting here next to a fireplace so that I don't freeze to death, because it's cold as shit. As far as I'm concerned, again, we've covered this at the start. We covered this in last week's episode. It is not as cold in Vancouver as it is in the rest of Canada. Cool, we've got that as written. I am cold. Do not temperature shame me because I am cold in this country that apparently offended the sun. Okay? That's not my fault. That's your fault for whatever you did that meant that, like, this, like, even the sun gives you the side eye. Like, a few like Canadians have been talking to me about the fact that on the last show I described the sun setting like on a slant here, like in Australia, like it comes up and then it just goes down, and we're like, cool, that's the sun, horizon, 90 degrees, and then like another like straight 90 degrees down. But over here, like I keep watching the sun like dance between buildings on the way down, which means that as the sun's go, even the sun is doing this as it passes you. So I mean, like, I'm just saying, whatever you did to offend it, I'd love it if we could talk about it, and just get it back, because I would love to feel my toes. I went out to, I need to find furniture, obviously, so I was looking at furniture, and when I was looking at like, I think you call them comforters over here, duvets, doonas back home in Australia. And I asked the lady like how much thicker they come. She laughed and was like, oh, well, you know, like you don't want to be sweating in bed. And I was like, I don't think sweating in this country is ever going to be a problem for me. So I would really like for that to happen. You can breathe and your nostrils stick together here? That's a thing. That is actually a thing. Oh, boy. Like I was playing a game the other day, and it was cold enough inside that I was literally like I noticed my fingers were slowing down trying to roll dice. However, I am a sook and I grew up in Queensland, so I'm used to a little bit more heat than that. So anyway, look, that's just about it from me today. Really excited to see what we get out of Adepticon. We'll find out. There's obviously going to be stuff coming out. There's a huge Age of Sigmar stuff going on. So keen to find out that. I'm sure LLV is not going to sleep for 2 days because he's probably just going to be like consuming stats constantly and then secreting them, which I think is going to be next Monday. Next Monday will be that. Yeah, if he can get the stats out by next Monday, I'll bring them to you as soon as we're on next Monday. Did you ever look into the Broadside Bash in San Diego? Nice and warm down there. Beer of Fraud. Mate, if you could please message that to me, that sounds like the kind of thing that I would love to go to. San Diego, never been there. In fact, never been anywhere in this entire continent except for Vancouver now. So hit me up with that one. So Adepticon don't record factions, only Grand Alliance. Well, just a beautiful mind it and work out what everybody played. But we can at very least talk about stuff that's going on at Adepticon. There'll probably be things announced. Okay, good night, Budtastic Guy. Do you want a little good night message as well, or would you rather just get to sleep without my voice whispering in your ear? That's totally up to you. But Beef of Fraud, yeah, on Twitter, drop me a message. Let me know, because that would be good. Okay, you'd like one. All right, sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to say a quick good night to Budtastic Guy. Yeah, man. Budtastic Guy, it's been a big day. And it's time for you to tuck your little head into bed. Lie down on your pillows. I hope you've got pillows. And just relax. Let all the tension just run out of your muscles. Take a nice deep breath in. Let out a big fart. And drift off into dreamland, where you're going to dream of dancing crocodiles and dingoes bringing you babies all night. All right. Sleep well, you beautiful man. Good night. All right. So you reckon Slanesh is getting it? This is actually another thing that I'd really like to talk about, is who people think is going to do really well at Adepticon. Personally, I think that what I found really interesting is at CanCon is in a large enough field, you notice those armies like Nagash with Grimghast Reapers and the Garvial Shore Charge lists and things like that. In a large enough field, they often tend to come up against either themselves or armies that can deal with them. So, which was interesting, like at CanCon, and regularly we're seeing these armies just below it. And they're still there, they're still doing well, but the top spots seem to be slipping away from them. And I think that's because it's the same thing I've spoken about a number of times. If you rely on an army that is quite commonplace, people know how to beat you. Like with my Dispossessed, I know how to beat a short charge list. Now, that's not saying that I'm always going to beat them, but I know how my army loses to them, so I know what to avoid. It's the same with Nagash. I haven't played as many Nagash Grimghast Reaper lists, but now the more I'm playing them, the more I'm learning where the weakness is. And I think that is the real threat at playing those. I agree. I think Flesh Eater Courts is really competitive in certain areas. However, I don't think they're going to win. I think if I had to put my money on it, I would say maybe Skaven. Only because Skaven are new enough that people don't have a perfect idea of them. They didn't come out and people went, oh, fuck. Because, like, think about Flesh Eater Courts. They released at the same time as Skaven. Skaven people were talking about kind of like, oh, this and that, and like the Endless Spell is really cool and blah, blah. Flesh Eater Courts people were like, there is a whole section of this army that is just pants on head fucking stupid. Which means that anyone planning on winning at Adepticon has a plan to deal with them. The thing about Skaven is they have a lot of like interdisciplinary cool stuff. And that means that it's real hard to plan against them. So I'm going to put it out there. I think Skaven's going to take out Adepticon. Just because of that variety in list building. Yeah, I mean, look, there's always the stuff about whether things are going to be how new and fresh and things like that. I personally have always been and will always be a huge big fan of list submission being a requirement. Fight me if you disagree. And I'm totally cool actually with people having different opinions. I welcome it, but for my money, I think the purpose behind having list submission, I would always set it that your army list needs to be submitted, like the cutoff point for an army is after its FAQ comes out. And I get that that's shit if a book gets released just before an event because you're like, I really want to take it. But if your FAQ hasn't come out prior to list submission, I don't think you should be able to take the army, because you look at how many things get cleared up by errata and FAQs after they come out, whether it's an oversight by the designers, whether it's something that's not particularly well worded, and all of a sudden people go like, oh, that's what that means. It's just, if I was running a tournament and the idea was competitive war dollies, I would want it to be as fair and balanced as possible. And I think that's how you achieve that. Fight me if you disagree. And all opinions are welcome, but I will come at you like a bear made out of knives. Which is why I hope that we start to see it. Now, I get that it is a lot of work. I get it's a lot of work to deal with, but I do think that it's important. It's also, like we've seen, there have been times when people lose because an army just comes out, but the person playing that army has had a lot of time learning it. I'm not going to jump in on it except to say that I would probably not want to give someone a bad experience because I've got a whole lot more with something they couldn't possibly know. I think that's rough. But anyway, it's up to everyone to decide what's going to be it, and it's up to TOs to decide, and ultimately we as players then decide if we want to support that event. Actually, Chris, if you are in the chat, I think if anyone wants to go check out Wounded Mortally on Twitter, I hope you've posted up the scenario pack for Sydney GT there. Not Sydney GT. Sorry, I'm so sorry, for Sydney Slaughter. Sydney Slaughter there. Sydney GT is a different thing. Sydney Slaughter. It's one of Australia's biggest. It's Sydney. I think it's Sydney's biggest, or one of Sydney's biggest events of the year. And the really awesome thing, I'll retweet it as well. But if you go and check out Wounded Mortally on Twitter, Chris does up a custom scenario pack for every year, and it's fucking awesome. And looking at the scenarios this year, I'm actually kind of crushed that I can't come to it because they're really, really cool. They're all based around like different stuff. Like the first one that jumped out at me is like the Norholes one. The deployment's interesting. Everything about it is super, super interesting. So I would definitely say people need to go and have a look at that. Because that's another thing that I really like is when you see events with their own missions. Now, it takes somebody who has a really high understanding of the game to do that. Chris does understand a fair bit about it, which is real cool. He's a very talented player, but he's also a very talented like organizer. And those missions for me being different is real cool because it means that you can't just have your standard Gristlegore list that crushes everyone's souls in most other games, bring it to this event and just port it into new missions because it might not do as well. It adds a really cool story element to it, but it also adds an element of not being the same missions that we've been playing for 12 months when you get up to it. So I'd recommend people go and have a read. I'm talking to some of the guys here in Vancouver because I want to play through the missions, and I think they're spectacular. I think they're a lot of fun. Chris is real good except at Masters. That is his one thing, is like he rocks up to Masters and just is hot shit. He knows what he done wrong. He knows what he should have done different, but he doesn't do it. It's like you know, all those memes about the kid on the bike who puts the thing through the wheel and knocks himself off. That's his move. And you know what? We've all got that move. Like my Prime's move, anytime he came out of the sky in the old version where I couldn't change both the dice on his charge, straight up double ones and double twos. He did not want an absolute bar of anything. Now, just to kind of just quickly touch back on that list submission stuff, it is up to players to decide what they want to go to, and it's also up to us to kind of decide what we want to do and not be dicks about it. So that's kind of everyone's own move. I mean, some people are playing war dollies because they want to be competitive, and that's super cool. Like, I don't expect to be best friends with every single person I meet. I'd love to, but I don't expect it. So let's just be cool people. And also, I guess the flip side is, if you win, do you just want to win because you wrecked everybody and did it that way, or do you want to win because you played really good games against really good people? Well, that's always the thing for me. Is there's not much fun winning an event or doing really well if you didn't play people who challenged you. And so I think that's where the really cool stuff is in it. And that's where I'm finding real challenging over here, because there's a lot of armies that I haven't seen before, that I haven't played, and they are just knocking me around, which is good fun. I'm excited for Wet Coast. So Wet Coast GT coming up next month here in Canada. There's some in America that people have been hitting me up about, and I'm starting to look at flights and accommodation for those because I can't wait. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see where Khorne goes with a lot of stuff. It could be interesting to see how they do, given that they're brand new. We haven't seen a lot of stuff, but I think that it's going to be interesting. Yes, there are soft scores. I'm not a big fan of the phrase soft scores. It's a bit like, when people call the story or the fiction and the world building fluff. It's like, it's just, it seems like a little bit of a backhanded way to talk about it, especially when people work really hard on it. I get the idea. I don't think that it's soft. To be honest, playing a 2.5 hour game of War Dollies, that's fun. Spending months or years painting an army, I don't think that's particularly soft. I also don't think I don't think that it's soft being a friendly gamer, but I know what you mean, LLV, and I'm not saying that that's how you intended it, but I would really love to change the wording on soft scores. Like if we said like hobby scores or gamesmanship, I think is one of the ones I've seen some of the Aussies using. I dig that. Instead of saying soft scores, it's like hobbymanship and gamesmanship and stuff like that. I think it's it's a better way of phrasing it. No, that's empty. But yeah, Khorne at Acon is old book, and I'm all about that as well. I love that they made that call, they made that decision. It's good. Yeah, people all about list submission to be reviewed, published, so other players can see it. But yeah, so yeah, old school Wrathmongers are still doing their thing. Okay, yeah, that kind of changes a few things, I guess. But yeah, I'm kind of excited to see it. How do I find the Canadian scene? Super welcoming. It actually reminds me a lot of Sydney. So Sydney, the thing that I often say to people, like if they're just getting into it or just interested, I was like, just join the Facebook group and say hello. It's such a friendly group. It's so cool. It's so awesome. Vancouver is much the same. I've been invited to so many games. I got a game tomorrow. I'm a part of a league. People keep inviting me to their houses for games nights and things like that. The scene here is really, really cool. And just like back home growing, if I was to like compare it to Sydney, I would say like the scene here is where Sydney was 12 to 18 months ago. And like, I don't mean that to be like, they're so behind us, but I mean like the size and the growth. Like looking at the growth, the number of players, the number of people jumping on board and getting excited about it. That's where Sydney was when it just started to explode there, and I feel like it's just starting to explode here as well. So Chris Welfare for talking about Sydney Slaughter, saying that gamesmanship is like the sports scores. And just to reiterate, because every single time it comes up, people who haven't really played in Australia don't understand what we talk about when we say in Australia that gamesmanship is a part of your score. It's not that you get a sports score out of 5 that's added to it. You have a very practical list of things that you tick off that your opponent did. So it's not really open to interpretation. It's like one will be, did my opponent roll all of their dice clearly where I could see them? Did my opponent clearly say what they required to roll and what they were rolling for before rolling any dice? It's very clear, very practical stuff like that. So that if, say, you only tick 4 out of the 5 or whatever, the TO can come up to you and go like, hey, I noticed that you only gave them 4 out of 5. What's the go? And they go, oh, well, there were a few times where he was rolling his dice and he was a little bit about it, and I didn't know what he was rolling for, and he told me afterwards. And the TO goes, sweet. That also means that that player, if they get to the end of the tournament and they see that their gamesmanship score is dropped by 3 or 4, they can ask the TO, like, what did I get marked down for? And the TO can say, you weren't clear about what you were rolling for. A few people found it a little bit like miffing, and so they marked you down. That teaches that person what they did, and so that they can improve it. Again, it's not changing who they are. It's not saying that they need to be a better person, you've got to make friends. It's just saying, like, your gamesmanship just needs to be improved a little bit. In the same way that if someone smashes a racket playing tennis, they get penalized for it. It's exactly the same thing. And the other thing that I think is really important about that, and this is where some people disagree, is they say that it should go the other way. Like, you should mark off when people do the wrong thing to subtract. And I disagree, because the thing is, people are much more likely to tick and leave blank. It's much easier to leave a space blank and be like, oh, I'm giving them 4 out of 5, than it is to say, well, I'm giving them -2 or I'm giving them -1. It's just, it's a different way of thinking about it, and I think it leads to people being a bit more honest. The one thing I do think, though, is that if that is the system, and you do like have like like in Australia, most tournaments will give you like a booklet, and you fill out your booklet with your opponent, who won, the results, and then you tick the any and all sports like gamesmanship stuff that applies. I think it's actually quite good form. I often, when I notice that my opponent is filling out their book and they get up to that section, I like move away, because I don't want them to feel like, there's nothing worse than when someone's like filling out their thing and just like making unbroken eye contact with you, clearly waiting for you to do the 5, and then I'm just like, yeah, man, okay, well, I'm gonna give you an honest score no matter what. So you didn't do that, and now we both know it, and it's a little bit awkward. So like, I'd like to give someone a little bit of room, just so that if they're gonna mark me down, they can. And to be honest, that's actually where I learnt once. I was at a tournament, and I think I got marked down a sport point for a gamesmanship point that was asking whether someone was clear about all of their rules and stuff like that. I think was it. Because this is when I was playing with my Dispossessed in GHB 1 or 2. And basically what happened was I realized, like my opponent, almost everything, there's so many abilities in a Dispossessed army that are called grudge, right? Like, you've got this grudge and that grudge, and then you've got a command grudge, and all these fucking grudges in a Dispossessed army. And I realized that I'd just been saying, like, oh, well, I'm re-rolling this because of the grudge, I get this because of the grudge, blah, blah, blah. And I realized that I was being really unclear with my opponent as to what it was, which is that then learning that was the lesson for me to go, okay, so when I start the game, I need to be really clear about which grudge is what and what does what, and I'll just make sure I name things differently so that it's a bit clearer. And so, yeah, I think that it's a good thing. I think it leads people to be better games playery humans. So I'm a big fan of it. But yes, I do understand that some people can do dodgy stuff to try and get out. Yeah, etiquette, that's a perfect word for it. To paying for top scores, I think but you know what? Someone buys me a beer, I'm like, dude was okay. But if you didn't roll your dice where I can see them, you could buy me 1,000,000 beers. I'm still not ticking it, because it's like, well, no, you didn't do that. I dig, just what Chris from the Mortally Wounded podcast has said there. The best opponent votes go for best sports, which is separate to the ranked positions. I actually like that we're seeing that. It's something that Rob spoke about a little bit over in the UK. I do think that your gamesmanship score should go towards the overall positions of first, second, and third. I do think your painting should go towards your overall rank positions of first, second, and third, but not necessarily like again, in Australia, when we say painting, there's a thing called a painting rubric. And it'll say there'll be upwards of 30, 35 points that you can score in that rubric, but you max out at 20. So if you've got 3 colors, shading, a little bit of highlighting, and you've done some bases, you'll probably max out at 20. You can then have tons of freehand, you can have conversions, you can have all of this stuff. You might get a full 35 points, but only 20 will be added to your score, and I dig that. because it means that someone with grey plastic isn't going to be taken out the event. You have to have been a decent player, a good general. And when I say a decent player, I mean you have to have decent gamesmanship, you have to be a good general, and you have to have put a little bit of effort into your hobby as well. And that, to me, does make you a champion. But I do think that best sports and best painted should be separate things. And just because you get a best painted nomination, I don't think that that necessarily means that it should go towards your placement, because then it's more points that people who have put the effort in but might not be great painters. It's like if someone goes to a painting competition, they don't go there and then be like, oh yeah, sweet, but I could beat that guy in a game, so add that to my score. And they're like, well, no, this is a painting competition. I add it to my score. That's not how it works, right? So I think that at tournaments, we should have those three things separate: sports, painting, and overall, or sports, painting, gaming, like for the best general who did the best despite everything else. And then you have the overall positions 1, 2, or 3. Because if one day, and this is where I get excited, one day someone comes along who wins best sports, they win best opponent, like player's player, and then they win like best general as well. We have literally found like the ultimate person anywhere at that event. And there should be a special prize for that. Like we should have a super, super special prize, which I think is kind of exciting. And I'd be really excited to see if that becomes a thing. Like, you know, can you imagine if you go to an event and every year there is a trophy there for like the grandmaster or whoever, whatever it is, that just goes unwon for 2, 3, 4 years. The Messiah, yeah, it's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy, but that one trophy that doesn't get won, and then finally someone picks it up and gets it because they just, that beautiful moment. I mean, we'd go crazy, right? We'd go absolutely batshit insane, and that's kind of what I'm excited for. I reckon it'd be really cool to see, and I reckon it also takes the pressure off people being like the winner, because no one's going to expect that they're going to go out and get it. Oh, hey, while I've got you all here as well, just quickly, hey, could someone type into the chat, because I think I added a command in. I'm not 100% certain though. Just type in like exclamation mark and then all lowercase dispossessed. Because I think I added a command in and I would love it. I think it should, if you type it, it should whisper something back to you. I'd also love it because then if people start doing it on like Rob's stream, he'll have no idea what's going on because he won't think it's a command. So yeah, if someone's typed that in, I see a couple of people might have, just let me know if it does anything or if it whispers back. If it doesn't whisper anything back to you, I need to change the settings. Or like sort something out. But yeah, I'm basically going to slowly, okay, so I need to fix it up. Great. I'm going to slowly start introducing secret commands into the chat, just to basically mess with Rob. Okay, good. So I look, to be honest with you, I have no idea what I've done with Nightbot. I just keep adding different stuff to it. So maybe potentially I put it in, I haven't made it live, but I will let you guys know every Friday like maybe just one a week. I'll just insert a new chat command every week. Nobody, please don't, because I doubt Rob's going to be watching this. He's probably asleep. And if he does, I don't think he'll go right through. I'm basically gonna sleep it the best one. Yeah, no, I'll sneak in one a week. I'll tell you what it is here, and then just mess with him. But I'll make it like that it whispers it back, and because he's not gonna check, I'll put it right down the bottom of Nightbot commands, and we'll just nobody shoot him. Have evidence that they're the worst one. And good. They're not the best Warden. They're not good at all. The best Warden are dispossessed because it sounds like best in their name, and obviously things that rhyme are exactly what it is. So look, thank you very much everyone for trying to that. Who's messing with my bots? Yep. No one tell him that I've been messing with his bots, please. Him or Scrivo. I'm just going to sneak commands in until they realize, and then get in trouble. But look, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You've been amazing. That is going to be it for this evening, or this afternoon, or this morning, wherever you are in the world. It's been lovely to have you here again. I also got to say thank you so much, internet in Canada, for being just fucking great compared to Australia. Um, it's beautiful. It's amazing. The only thing Canada that I'd love it if you could do a little bit better was coffee. Um, God, God, what happened here to you people? Like, did it just not translate? Like I ordered a small. I ordered a small, and it was like that and on fire. I assume. Like I assume it was on fire. It was so hot. I had to take the lid off and just air it before I could drink it. So yeah, so I'm struggling with temperature both outside and inside, which is great. You know, it's good to know that your body is handling everything super well. But we will be back again next Monday. I'll have a chat to Rob because some of you obviously want to we call it wine and war dollies or scotch and sniffing paint. I don't know, but something on a Friday where maybe we can talk about alcohol and war dollies because obviously that's what we're excited about. Slaughter Priest, yeah, good idea. Slaughter Priest, that'll be the one. But it'll be a nice way to bring it back. Scalding coffee, I just pour it down my pants, keep myself warm. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You have been amazing. You've been absolutely wonderful people once again, and yeah, I can't wait. I'll see you next week. I'll either see you this later on this week, depending on how we go, or I'll see you next week. And yeah, it's been wonderful to have you play Dispossessed, and please keep the little secret between us about all the chat commands that I'm going to slip into Nightbot, because that would be great. All right. Thank you very much.